Here we go. I call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, January 29th, 2018, and the time is 7 p.m. Dr. Hillman, there were just a couple of personnel items in the table file.
Yes, this evening in the table file we just had some additional appointments, increase, decrease, and change in assignment, and a couple of resignations in the table file as well.
Okay, excellent, thank you. We'll add those to the agenda. If there's no objection, we'll add these items to the agenda as we move forward. We now have an opportunity for public comment. This is a chance for anyone residing in the Northfield Public School District to address the board. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? Seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Board members, you have in your packets two sets of minutes, one of the regular school board meeting held on Monday, January 8th, 2018, as well as the organizational meeting held that same evening, Monday, January 8th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve both sets of minutes? Moved by Noel, is there a second? Second by Jeff. Any comments or questions regarding the minutes? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the regular school board meeting as well as the minutes of the organizational meeting held on Monday, January 8th, 2018, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Dr. Hillman, announcements and recognitions.
Yes, I have several announcements this evening. First, we'd like to announce that Mark Thornton, a high school teacher and coach, was recently selected as one of only 10 assistant football coaches in Minnesota to receive the Butch Nash Assistant Coach of the Year presented by the Minnesota Football Coaches Association. So congratulations to Mr. Thornton. Northfield High School teachers Sarah Swan McDonald and Jennifer Lompart delivered keynote remarks at last Monday's Northfield Human Rights Commission community-wide Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration. They spoke about their collaborative programming, engaging students to discuss immigration through sharing stories and asking questions. It was a very powerful keynote discussion at the Dr. King celebration, and numerous other students were involved in the entire evening from our schools. Kira Cooney and Siri Hoff served as the MCs for the evening. Rihanna Richmond read a powerful poem of hers titled Freedom Bells that earned a standing ovation, and it was the standing ovation where I went bang, everybody was on their feet immediately. It was very, very powerful, and as always, it's one of our premier community events of the year, so thanks to all the folks who participated. And again, congratulations to Northfield High School English learner teacher Jennifer Lompart again, because she not only was the keynote speaker, but she also received the Human Rights Commission Award last Monday at the community-wide Dr. King celebration. Jennifer was recognized for what you all know as her advocacy and instructional work with our English language learners and making sure that there's equitable resources and access and support. And so on behalf of the district, we're so proud of Jennifer and the work that she has done for our students, and we're so pleased to see that the Human Rights Commission recognized that with this very prestigious award. We also have some really great news from Northfield High School DECA. On January 12th, 2018, we had 41 DECA students compete at the district competition in Owatonna. The following 26 students earned trips to the state DECA competition held March 4th through 6th in Minneapolis. Many students earned trips in multiple events, and 11 students won first place honors, 6 won second place, and 3 won third place honors. And our state qualifiers is a pretty substantial deal, so we're going to read their names. Alex Barniak, Evan Clay, Dylan Kudermash, Jack Fox, Joe Gatzloff, Mikhail Geisler, Allison Goodall, Maxwell Gordon Mercer, Desiree Hartley, Luke Johnson, Rachel Leonard, Aaron Lopez, Noah Moyer, Jeremy Nelson, Claire Nielsen, Griffin Rod, Brian Rodriguez, Reed Roney, William Sherman, Andre Simonet, Anna Sullivan, Bridget Sullivan, Brooke Viscasil, Riley Weffel, Jenna Waitala, and Jason Waitala. So, if you think 5 years ago we did not have a DECA program, and we had this many students, 26 students who qualified for the state meet, that's pretty impressive. So thanks to their very talented advisor, Mrs. Woolner, and all of these students for their hard work. One other announcement here this evening is that we would like to welcome our new executive assistant to the superintendent and school board, Anita Ozzie, who is sitting over on the right-hand side of me here this evening, and we'd like to welcome Anita to her first. Today was her first day, and let alone. So, Anita, would you just like to say something to the board here?
I'm very honored to be here. I'm very pleased to be with Northfield Public Schools and I'm having a really good first day.
She's promised she'll come back tomorrow. That's always a good thing, so. Welcome. So those are your announcements for this evening.
Excellent. Thank you.
Every day ends this way.
It's a marathon first day for sure.
Yeah.
So, board members have any other announcements or recognitions? Okay. Since it is the second board meeting of the month, we sometimes have committee reports available, but there were none submitted. I think it's just the transition of the December-January time period where a lot of our liaison committees haven't quite had the winter break, so we'll look forward to those in February. So we'll move then for items for discussion and or report. Tonight we start with the Benefits Advisory Committee report. Director of Human Resources, Molly Wieselman, is here to present, and there was her PowerPoint presentation in your packets.
So, hello everyone. I'm really excited to come and tell you about our the little bit of the history for our Benefit Advisory Committee, where we started and where we are as of today. Last week, two of our committee members, Ray Coudray and Carol Beamer, were supposed to join me. They couldn't make it tonight. But Val Murdesdorf is also on the Benefit Advisory Committee, so I'll be asking her to chime in if she has anything to add. I get really excited when I talk about insurance, so bear with me. So I'm going to start with dental because it's a little bit simpler to explain than the health insurance. So we were fully insured with with Mutual of Omaha through August 31st of 2005. And we continued to see our rates increase and increase. We had a 8% increase in FY03 and then a 5% increase in FY04. I personally had been doing a lot of reading about self-insurance. And I had a lot of interest in that, so we started talking about self-insurance through the Benefit Advisory Committee and whether or not that would be a good move for our group. And we decided to give that a try. So September 1st of 2005, we moved our business from Mutual of Omaha under a fully insured plan to Delta Dental under a self-insured plan. Moving from the insurance company paying our rates to us paying our own claims, and we would pay our rates into our own pool and pay our claims from that internal pool. So our goal for our self-funded dental plan was $200,000 to maintain a $200,000 balance in that account. At the end of FY12, we had $495,770 in that account, and at the end of FY13, over $526,000. So we're well over our goal of our maintained balance. And so we did in FY14, we did a premium holiday, meaning none of our employees paid any premium for their dental insurance that year. We just continued to pay all of our claims out of that pool that had grown, and we didn't charge any of our employees any premium. And then the next year, you can see FY14, after that it was down to $356,000, but that was still well over our goal. So then we bought the premiums halfway back up, so from nothing to halfway back up where they were. And so that our employees only paid half the premium that they would have normally paid. And then FY16, we bought our premiums back to the regular premium that we had always charged. We have not seen an increase to our premiums with Delta since 9/1 of 2005. We've only ever decreased our premiums or taken a premium holiday where they didn't pay anything. And we've enhanced our benefits multiple times during that time period, adding, increasing our ortho coverage for our families with kids, added coverage for implants. That was just new this year. And covering white fillings instead of the silver fillings, which are all more expensive. So we did enhance our benefits without increasing our premium since 2005. So that's a little bit about where we're at with our dental. And so health insurance is a little bit different than dental insurance is. Having sort of dipped our toes in the proverbial waters of self-insurance, we decided to start looking at doing that for health insurance. And it's a little more nerve-wracking with health insurance, as Val will attest to. And our group is kind of in the middle of where our size of our group was not small enough where it would be like, no way, we could never do that. And it wasn't big enough where it was kind of like, well, this is a no-brainer, let's just do it. We were kind of in the middle. So there was a lot of planning that we did. I had some conversations with our people at Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they said there's some steps you should really take before going self-insured, and I'll talk a little bit about those steps at the end here. But so we kind of did some things to get our group ready to make that move. And we had been seeing rate increases of upwards of 18.4%. We were part of a service cooperative, the Southeast Service Cooperative out of Rochester, but we were the largest group in that cooperative. So even if we had a really, really good year with our claims experience, we took a rate increase because we had to help all those other groups in the cooperative. So it wasn't necessarily a great fit for Northfield schools. Not that you don't want to help other school districts, but when we were having 18.4% increases when our rates were going down, that was kind of hard for our group to take. And we had been doing some really heavy lifting in our benefit advisory committee to go from 4 plans to 2 plans, moving our group into more high deductible where our employees have to be more consumer driven with their health insurance, just like they are with purchasing anything else. So we had been doing a lot of work moving things in that direction, but a lot of districts weren't willing to do that work, which is why they were experiencing such high claims, and we were paying in the end. We were paying for them not wanting to do that work. So we did go self-funded September 1st of 2011, and in order to leave the cooperative, we had to move our business from Blue Cross Blue Shield to Medica, because Blue Cross Blue Shield would not bid on our business outside the cooperative because they have all the cooperatives. So we went with Medica September 1st of 2011, and then we moved our business back to Blue Cross Blue Shield and also changed our renewal date January 1st of 2016 in order to align our flexible insurance benefits and our HRA that's attached to our One Health plan. So they're all renewing and running the plan years all at the same time, which it was sometimes confusing for our employees. So we tried to simplify that, and we moved all that at the same time. So now we pay our own claims out of our self-funded pool. And our goal for our self-funded pool for health insurance is $2 million. And as you can see by the graph here, we've done extremely well with the self-funded. As of June 30th, 2017, we were 3.6 million over our fund balance goal. And that is really significant. In the past, that money would have been left with the insurance company. We would have been paying that money out in premium and never seeing anything back for that. Now we keep that, we hold that money in our internal fund, and that's how we can really keep control of what we do with our insurance premiums. This year, our premiums have not increased since September 1st of 2011 when we went self-funded. And now this year, actually for 2018, because now we're on a calendar year renewal, we decreased our overall health premiums by $100 a month. And then Val came to the table at negotiations and had an idea about decreasing the overall premium, but also decreasing the contribution that is negotiated in our teacher contract, that they would take less, $50 less a month, and then, so now they pay $50 less a month, and the district pays $50 less a month, which helps, you know, our child nutrition budget, our general fund budget, our community services budget, because they're all paying less towards that insurance out of those funds. So that was a really good feeling this year for our Benefits Advisory Committee after all those years of making those significant changes in our insurance plans. Insurance is extremely an emotional thing for our staff. Changes are not easy to make when you're talking health insurance and they get used to a plan and then you're going to take that plan away. It's very emotional. So we are very careful about how often we want to make changes like that. So we did some heavy lifting and the work that they did was phenomenal. So the other considerations that, some of this is what I alluded to earlier, the changes that really what we had to do in order to make it right for our group to go self-funded was Wayne Waxlin, our consultant at the time with Blue Cross Blue Shield, said you really want to have your retirees that are 65 or older that are no longer actively working, you want to move them to a district-sponsored Medicare plan, which we didn't have in the past. They just stayed on our group health plan. He said it would be better for the district, it would be better for the retirees, they'd have a much better plan and pay way less money for it than they do on your group health plan. So I had done a lot of research on implementing Medicare plans, and then our union, our teacher union, came forward to the negotiations table and they said, could we offer Medicare plans for our retired people that are 65 or older? And so we wanted to move in that direction and they came, and that was an extremely good collaboration between the district and our NEA teacher union, because now it costs the district significantly less in those post-benefit retirement premium payments that we make. We pay less, the employee pays less, and they have a much better product. And now their claims are no longer on our group health plan after 65, which helps our self-funded, where we wanted to go with our self-funded. So that is that. Is there any questions on any of this? And I did want to add that $100 reduction in our overall premiums doesn't seem like a lot, but that is a 16.5% reduction in our in health insurance premiums for calendar year 2018. And a lot of places are seeing increases of that amount or higher. So we were very proud of that move. Val, did you have anything you wanted to add?
You covered it pretty well.
Okay. Any questions?
Well, it's really apparent to realize why you're so excited, and this is just a story that can't be told often enough. So thank you. And are there questions, comments? Rob?
You said that the pool was kind of in between. Could you just say what the size of the pool is? I mean, how many people are coming?
We have roughly 12, I call them belly buttons, 1,200 belly buttons. We have roughly 500-ish employees, but when you take in the family accounts, it's about 1,200 actual individuals covered.
Great question. Ellen?
So mine's a comment, not a question, which is just, I would echo what Julie said about hearing this again and again, but two peak points that you brought up that I really appreciated hearing this year was, one, that how you had laid this out to the staff and employees to be this more consumer model before you made that switch, and how helpful that has been for the plan, and because they're all self-insured, so they're all responsible for that sort of consumer type behavior, and how wonderful that is, and what a great story it tells. And then this past year with what it was able, the situation that you and Val brought to the negotiations, and that the NEA had been agreeable to, and how we were able to save taxpayer money and have this wonderful story to tell about the benefits. I mean, it's just a really nice piece of work, and so I appreciate the Benefits Advisory Council and all the work that you guys have put into this.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? No.
Molly, there's a backup plan for an emergency, high cost emergency? Is there a backup plan or something?
Well, yeah, the backup plan would be what we would call stop loss insurance. And so we carry stop loss insurance. So any claims that are over 100,000?
No, it'll be 125 this year.
125 this year. then our stop loss carrier would pick that up. So, and we've really had pretty good claims experience. I think we have 4 right now that have exceeded stop loss since the beginning of the school year. Our claims and our renewals go on a calendar year, but we always start looking at our claims, in the fiscal year as well. And I think we only have 3.
One's really close.
One's really close, so 3, but almost 4. So, but some years we've had 8 or 9 that have exceeded stop loss. So that's really the contingency plan, Noel, for those high claimants. And we do have those, but that's what our insurance is for. It's to, help those people get well and get better. And we don't want people not to use it. But to Ellen's point, we went from 4 plans, one of them a first dollar base plan, which, you had a $50 deductible and the plan paid everything after that, or a $20 copay and then the plan paid everything after that. When you have that little money coming out of your own pocket as a consumer, it's easier to just go for little things that, you could take a nap and drink some extra water and that scratchy throat might feel better. If it doesn't, then you go into the doctor. But that was really a mind shift for our employees when they had to start being consumers, and especially on the HRA plan where the district funds that money. That's their own money that they're spending, because that is an interest-bearing account that does roll forward from year to year.
Excellent. Amy?
I want to add my congratulations to this successful story that you have, and I just have a question about it. When you started with the Blue Cross Blue Shield self-insured, and you set the rates for the employees, were they based on what Blue Cross Blue Shield's current rates were? And
no, when we went self-insured, we were actually, the insurance company came to us and said you could take a reduction, but our benefit advisory committee decided that was the time for us to go self-insured, and we kept our premiums flat. We didn't do a reduction, we didn't do an increase, we just kept them flat. And the benefit advisory committee were all on, we couldn't have made any of these changes without the committee as a whole, because you have to have the buy-in of your bargain groups, because any changes to benefits have to be voted on by our bargain groups. So they were on board with leaving them flat, and that helped us really build our pool. And correct me if I'm wrong there, Val, but that's really how we started out so well, is because we could have taken a significant reduction, but we left our premiums flat in order to build that internal fund, and that worked really well for us. And then we just look at the prior year's claims experience, and we do some projections and look at it, and then we determine whether or not we have to take an increase or we leave them flat. And we have left them flat since 2012. They haven't been changed until 2018, where now we reduced the premium.
have you ever, just for fun, compared the rates that we provide to the staff to what the current market rates are?
Well, we do look. I look at, I talk to other people in other districts that, about our size, and some of them are fully insured, but some of them are self-insured. Some of them are having good experience. Some of them have not had such good experiences with self-insured. So it's kind of all over the board. We really spend more time focusing on what's happening in our district with our employees and what the need is here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great questions. Any other questions?
Can I have Molly say a couple more?
Yes, absolutely.
Could you talk about a little bit, we're talking about the insurance as it is right now, but I think another really important part of the story is the bright line that we drew in 2009.
Yes.
In terms of, so this is important. She's talking about tonight we're talking about the insurance right now, but we also heard a lot of school districts that have a tremendous amount of anticipated debt, for lack of a better term, that they are going to have to pay for retirees. Could you just talk a little bit about that bright line and how we're handling people hired after 2009?
Yep. Our teacher contract and several of our other contracts have a post-retirement insurance benefit contribution, where for so many years, depending on lots of different factors, which I won't get into, but that the district continues to pay towards their insurance after they retire. And that is, it's a post-retirement liability, because we don't ever know what the premiums are going to be, so it's an unknown factor in the OPEB liability was getting to be where if we had to pay that out, we wouldn't have the money to do that. So during the negotiations process, and again, the teacher union, that's where we started with the Bright Line, and we kind of sunsetted that post-retirement benefit for insurance contribution, and we implemented a retirement health reimbursement arrangement where we pay $1,000 for each person hired after July 1st of 2009. They complete a year of service, we pay that in, and that's something that we can actually book and cost out and predict, where insurance premiums can be all over the board. And so it's no longer a post-retirement liability because now we fund it year by year. Does that?
And I think the other key thing is in order for people to actually see that money, to use it, they have to have worked for the district for at least 10 years. And the beauty of that is that once they've worked for 10 years, not only can they become vested and can spend, it also becomes portable. So if they leave the district, they can take it with them at that time too. So they call it a pay-as-you-go system.
Right.
And it does so much, it's so much better for us being able to calculate up front and not incurring that long-term liability. I think that's so important. The other thing, if you could just mention to board members, is how the Health Insurance Transparency Act and the bidding that we have, because I think that's an important part too. Could you just talk a little bit about how that bidding process has helped us?
Yep, the Health Insurance Transparency Act that went into place requires us to bid out our business every two years. I didn't look that up before I came down here. And then we have an opportunity to look at bids. We can accept the bids. We have to do a RFP and put it in the paper, and then they have to have it delivered by a certain time to our office, and then we do our bid opening. But then we can go back to the insurance carrier saying, we can't say who bid what, but we can say the lowest bid is this, and everyone has to come back with their new best offer. So we've actually benefited. So many people have complained about the HITA Act, but we have actually benefited, I believe, from that transparency and being able to say this was the lowest bid, and it wasn't our current insurance carrier, and so they have to do a better job of coming in with better numbers for us, and that has worked in our favor.
I think that just goes again to the diligence that Molly and the Benefits Advisory Committee have. I mean, no stone unturned in this thing, which is why we have had such a success story. And insurance is such a nightmare for so many districts, and for us it's something we really celebrate. And when we have new employees come, many people say they get better coverage here for less than what they paid in their previous district. So it's really goes to our strategic plan and making sure we can recruit and retain the highest quality people possible. And Molly has led that team over the years, and Ray Kugray and Carol Beamer have been there from the beginning, but it is one of the high, if not the highest, it's one of the highest functioning committees that we have in the district.
And when I talk about the transition for our retired people onto our Medicare plans, I kind of skimmed over that and made it kind of sound like it wasn't a big deal, but it really was a significant work in progress to make that happen. And we had multiple meetings, because we have 185 retirees on our insurance. And so we have to track everything for our active staff, but we also have 185 on our, well, actually that's just on our Medicare products. We have another 33 on our group health plan that are retired but under 65. So it's a significant amount of people. And we had to have meetings, and Ray was at every single one of those meetings because most of them were retired teachers. And in order to make that transition smooth, we were both there, and Blue Cross Blue Shield did the presentations, and we helped. So we couldn't have, again, done any of this without the committee as a whole, because one person dictating to the district what we're going to do does not make things feel warm and fuzzy. And so that collaboration that we've experienced as a group, that we make all of our decisions together, has really worked well for the district.
Excellent. I just had one question. The 1,200 participants that you mentioned, does that represent a growth, or what has the trend in terms of enrollment? I'm assuming it's growing because it's such a good plan and more people maybe want to take advantage of it, but do you know what sort of the growth has been?
We
since
did have
2011?
a growth in our enrollment, but part of that was because we took on SEVSEC.
Sure.
And so it's kind of hard to know, because then we saw a decrease in our enrollment because SEVSEC was transitioned off our plans. But during open enrollment, and I don't exactly have those numbers right in front of me, our open enrollment was December of 2017 for an effective date of January 1st, 2018. We just kind of finalized all those enrollments and got those processed. So, what it looks like now, Andrea Nelson Walker, who is on our benefits advisory committee, and she's our benefits specialist, she said there was quite a few new enrollments because we were decreasing our premiums. And we announced that, in November when we started open enrollment, letting people know that our premiums were going down. So I don't have the exact number of what it happened, how it happened now, but.
I have the exact number.
Oh, do you? Okay.
So in 2015, we had 1,161 members. In 2016, we had 1,286. And this past December, we had 1,300, so.
Good, thank you.
So yes, it is going up even
Sure,
without
absolutely.
SEVSEC.
Okay, thank you. Was there any last comments or questions? Molly, thank you, and please
Thanks,
extend
everyone.
our sincere thanks to the advisory committee
I
for
will.
their work and for your leadership. It's just, as I said, this is a story that just can't be told often enough.
Thank
So
you.
thank you. We will see you back here shortly again.
Yes.
For another presentation. So next, an item for discussion and report is a financial forecast for 2018-19 general fund budget plan. Here, Director of Finance, Val Merstorff, and her presentation was also in your packets.
Good evening. So I'm going to present the financial forecast. I just use the arrows, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about our financial cycle and the different points in time that that we review financial information and present it formally for the board and for the community. Talk a little bit about our known parameters, the things that we are already aware of and can plan for, our enrollment projection, some of the assumptions that we're using in our model, and our summary of the 18-19 budget parameters, and then the timeline for the much awaited budget presentation. So our financial cycle, obviously we take stewardship pretty seriously. And so this is one of my favorite charts that just show the different points and times and the data points that we utilize. So the financial projection is right now, I utilize the revised budget that was just approved in December with all of our kind of finalized enrollment, student bodies and all those things. We have maybe some more insight into the legislative outlook, but a lot of that is a guess at this point, and our assumptions, and that really feeds into our adopted budget process. What I'm presenting tonight is the foundation for what I will be presenting this spring. We take all that information, the enrollment, continue to monitor that, staffing, and all that process, and then those budgets are presented in April, May, and June for the next year. And then in September, we have our annual audit. We get to compare the budget to actual and kind of have that finalized numbers and know where our fund balance came in compared to where we thought it would. And we take that data and then roll that into the revised budget with the final staffing. Everybody's been hired, all the students are here. And so it's a pretty natural flow. Everything just keeps kind of feeding into the next cycle. But it's good because we're constantly having data points to stop and check and make sure that we're on the right track, and able to provide you that information and keep you up to speed on what's happening. So that's a nice chart, just kind of showing the different things that happen to kind of flow into this process. So what we do know often doesn't feel like much, but we do know that we increased our unassigned general fund balance about $750,000 this past year for fiscal 17. So that is added into our fund balance moving forward. We obviously had a increase to our voter-approved operating referendum, which we are incredibly grateful for. That gives us about $2 million more of additional revenue to help us maintain programming. And then in December, I presented the revised budget that was approved. It was approved with deficit spending. So I'm looking forward to showing you what the new forecast looks like with our additional revenue and the way that's coming in. We also know that as a people business, 80% of our budget is just salary and benefits. As you heard, our benefits are going down in some areas, which is helpful in the long run, but 80% of our budget is just salary and benefits. And enrollment drives over 70% of our total revenue. So making sure that we're monitoring our enrollment and predicting that as accurately as possible is very important, because skewing that can mean a pretty significant change in our projection. So this is our current enrollment projection. For this year, I am projecting that we'll end just over 4,000 adjusted, or 4,400 adjusted pupil units. That's the weighted calculation. The total column is the actual average daily membership. And because of, this is our 7th year with increased enrollment, so the projection obviously takes our history and projects it forward. The last couple of years we've had a pretty significant increase in our enrollment. Some of the years were just a handful of students. The last couple of years we've had 50 plus student increases. So the different calculations that we can look at can, you know, significantly change because we've had such a significant growth in the last couple of years. So choosing an enrollment calculation that works with what we think is going to happen is a little tricky, but we've chosen one that's a little more conservative. We do use the schoolfinances.com enrollment projection model that gives us 17 different calculations to choose from. I talked a little bit about them in your narrative, and I won't go into a lot of detail because that's something that I really enjoy, but I know not everybody else would. But we can compare basically all 17 calculations. We typically choose one that's a little more conservative. We did choose the 4-year weighted numerical average this year. One of the things that I really like about the model is it actually will tell me if we had done this last year, which we did, which formula would have given us the closest prediction. And this one actually would have, and it was one of our more conservative, so that's what we chose this year. It can change from year to year, and the max min difference was like 74 students. So that's a pretty significant swing for a district our size. So making sure that we pick one that makes sense with our trends and what we think is upcoming is really important to make sure we're not overestimating the number of students we might be having, because that drives quite a bit. So we are still projecting an increase, just a little bit slower increase than what we've seen the last 3 years. And this is one of the graphs from the enrollment projection model. I can it lets me compare basically 5 at a time. So this was 5 that I was looking at, and the 4-year weighted numerical average is the one, it's the second one from the bottom. But you can see the gap, and because I use this for the financial projection, you can see what a big difference some of those lines have the further they go out. And so really making sure that we're in line with what we think is going to happen really helps kind of tighten that financial projection. So our financial assumptions, always consistent with the 16% fund balance goal and maintaining that. Our long-term facility maintenance fund, we are intending to grow that fund balance so we can continue to pay for projects in theory without having to get a bond and that sort of thing. That would be our long-term goal for that fund. So continuing to increase that where we can, but still managing all the projects that need to be done. Our revenue assumptions include a 1% increase in the basic per pupil revenue formula. I know in the past I've typically had probably like a 0.5%, but as I've looked historically, the last time we had a 0% was in 09, 10, and 10, 11. Otherwise we've had 1.5, or 2 the last several years. And one of my goals is to make our financial projection as accurate as possible so that we can have good data moving forward and making decisions that that are actually going to follow with what's going to happen. So I chose to go slightly less conservative this year based on what the history looked like. I did run it a couple different ways, so I knew it would happen either way, but 1% seemed to jive pretty well with what we've seen historically, but we'll obviously pay attention to what happens with the legislature in the future. But we do have 2% set for the next year. And the referendum has an inflationary increase built in. MDE does that calculation and has ranged from 1.8 to 2.6% roughly, so I have that set for about 2%. And 3% increase in our special education funding. There is a 4% increase rate factor written into statute. There's a few things that play into that, so I have 3% in our forecast. And then federal funding held flat, which is a pretty reasonable assumption at this point. And so our total, our 18-19 projected aggregate increase is about 7.87%, the primary increase obviously being the voter-approved increase to the referendum. On the expenditure side, salaries and benefits are averaging about a 3.4% increase. And the way that works is I take typically what the teacher contract settled at, and we've been pretty consistent with applying that to our other groups. And so we kind of assume that that's going to be the increase. And as Molly just talked about, the district did actually negotiate a decrease in the district share of our contribution, not just for our employees. So our health insurance cost, the expense for the district is actually decreasing. It's decreasing 7%, but I have a 5% decrease because we have seen increased enrollment. So I'm planning for a 2% increase in enrollment and a 7% decrease in our actual cost. And so that's pretty exciting because that's a big number as a part of our benefit expenditures. And just a 2% increase for all of our non-salary, so the supplies and electricity and all of those sorts of things are set at a 2% increase. So the aggregate for our expenditures is about 2.89 when you pull that all together. So this is super tiny and hard to read, so I apologize for that. But this just kind of summarizes our final fiscal year from last year, what our revised budget is right now, and then 3 fiscal years projecting forward. As you can see, the increase to the referendum really made a significant difference in the way our financial projection looks, and we are not anticipating that we would have to do any kind of budget reduction or budget adjustment until the 2022-23 school year at this point. We still will plan to increase our fund balance. The 17-18 is projected to be 22.59, and the end of next fiscal year is projected to be 24% unassigned fund balance. Again, we know that the state does not give us inflationary increases, and the 2% again was not, it was closer to inflation, but even that's a 2% increase on more than 50% of our total revenue. And so even when they had a $1.69 billion surplus, inflation wasn't on the table. So we like to be prepared for the worst. So, and we really strive in keeping our fund balance and making sure we can keep people in our programming as long as we can. So I think that's, oh, and the calendar, yep. So these are the dates with just kind of all the things that kind of lead up into the budgets. Most of the presentations start the last meeting in April through the last one in May. And then the meeting in June, I will bring the budget book with all of the good details because the budget does need to be approved before June 30th. So that's been our typical timeline. The only change, I did move the child nutrition in our internal service fund. I think I flip-flopped them. The child nutrition community services budgets really benefit from having an extra month of data to analyze what they think will happen in the next year. That is all I have. So I will gladly take any questions you might have.
Excellent, thank you. Questions or comments for Val? Margaret?
I say this every time, but I'm going to say it again. I think the taxpayers in our district can be very happy that we have a creative, responsible, transparent, and lots of other wonderful adjectives I can think of, administration, who are taking good care of our tax funds and providing excellent programming and having results like this. And thank you to the voters too for the levy increase, but it is also good stewardship. I have one question. I know that in the past couple of years we've seen a good increase from enrollment outside the district, the open enrollment. Do we foresee anything that could change that? Because I think that would throw a big wrinkle
It would.
in our budget. Do we foresee anything that could truncate that or suddenly change it?
I'd say that's pretty hard to predict.
Yeah.
You know, we certainly hadn't anticipated an additional 50 students coming in for an open enrollment, but that could just as easily switch the other way. Okay. I would say there's nothing that I'm aware of at this time that would be a significant change. Okay. But we're obviously always in tune and paying attention, but if something were to change significantly with open enrollment, we would certainly make the board aware of that.
Okay. And that's why we create that fund balance as well.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Excellent question. Ellen?
Thanks for such a great report. I was curious, so this year you said you decided to go with something slightly less conservative than you have in the past, and giving us a better sense. Obviously forecasting is challenging and wanting to hit as close to reality as useful for us in terms of planning. So tell us a little bit about going with a little bit less conservative approach and how that's going to be why you think that's the best fit this year.
So this is my 4th year, I believe, doing this. And the first 2 years I was definitely getting a feel for everything, wanting to be conservative. And while I enjoy coming in the audit and saying, we did really great, much better than I predicted, I'd like to say we did better than predicted, but have a much tighter margin. I think that's important for transparency and the trust that the community has for the numbers that we're providing. And so that was really the reason behind it. And 0.5% you know, I could use that, but that's not been historical. You know, we have had 0 and 0, and that is obviously something that could happen in the future, but that's not been the past for the last several years. So I wanted to make sure we were less conservative, but still reasonable. And 1, 1.5, and 2 are the last, you know, 7 years that I've looked at. So.
Great. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, other questions or comments? I had a question regarding some expenditure assumptions, particularly or specifically around special education. So,
Sure.
you know, we know the trend where we've seen an increased enrollment, and so we've had to adjust with corresponding staff mandates, et cetera. So what kind of assumptions did you need to put in place regarding special ed?
So that's pretty difficult. So we have obviously seen increased student enrollment. When I look at our December 1st child count, historically the numbers haven't increased significantly, but we've obviously seen pockets where there's caseload limits and those sorts of things that have mandated staffing. So the staffing shows an increase automatically, and there's always kind of this give and take with staff retiring, and so there's always this kind of built-in cushion that we have in the budget automatically. With that, I don't have a specific special ed increase across the board. The expenditures are a significant portion of the budget and have increased pretty consistently. But anytime we've added staff or those sorts of things, that gets added to the financial projection. So everything that we have currently is built in. But truthfully, we're running out of space that we could even serve those students and be adding staff. So it's one of those things that you have to balance and decide if how the expenses are going to come in. Is it going to be staffing, or is it going to be, placing students in programs because we don't have the space. So all of those factors have an increase in them, but not, I wouldn't say there's a significant increase just for special ed.
Okay. And then my question around title programs. I think you said you held federal funding flat in title programs?
Yes.
So our federal funding was held flat, so that's referring to our title programs?
Yep, title and special ed.
Okay.
We have 3 title programs that we have right now, and then our special ed are those are the primary. So.
Okay.
And we have a pretty decent carryover because we've been planning for the reduction from the federal level, so that helps kind of smooth that out a little bit.
Okay, yeah, that was really good to see, because I know that's a significant amount of money, and
Yep.
while I don't think the federal budget is in the point of having been determined, there's been all of the talk that will happen, so it's good to see that we're anticipating that.
Yep.
Again, kudos to you for taking that approach, because again, within that fund balance reserve, we have this special ed and this big piece of title funding that can swing either way, and so it's good that we do have that.
Yeah, our total federal budget's about 1.3 million. So.
And then my last question, could you just clarify when you were talking, it was under the revenue, 3% increase in special ed funding, 4% rate factor written in statute. Explain that.
So,
in English to those of us who do
I will
this
try my
every day.
best.
Just sort of a general sort of type.
Yep, so the new special ed formula that I think started in 2014 has what they call a ceiling and a floor. So there's basically 3 calculations that happen, and you get the lesser of. The first calculation is what would you have gotten under the old formula, the way it used to be with 53% of salaries and that sort of thing. The second formula is based on your student count. So different disabilities, if you have certain students in those categories, it's assigned a dollar amount and that's all added up. And then the third one is this ceiling and floor based on your prior year expenditures. So the ceiling increases by statute 4% each year. And your floor is basically what you had last year, and they increase it if you had enrollment increases, and they kind of try to prorate things to make sense. So technically, we could see a 4% increase in our revenue each year. We were pretty close to the cap prior to our change to SEVSEC. That reduced our revenue a little bit, also reduced our expenditures. So that kind of put us back more in the middle. We were in a point where if we had added a program, there would have been no additional revenue for it. So in theory, if our expenditures increase 4%, our revenue would be able to increase 4%, if that makes sense. And we've certainly seen a 4% increase in our special ed expenditures. So assuming we'll probably get that revenue, but knowing that there's, 3 other calculations that are happening at the same time that play into that. So I don't want to commit to the 4%,
That totally
just in
makes
case.
sense.
So
Yes, again, that's just such a moving target.
yes,
So, okay.
yep.
That
And the
makes
way
sense.
the SEVSEC tuition plays into that also can bring that down as well. So
Okay, excellent. All right, final questions or comments? No.
Thank you so much.
you're very welcome.
This is the kind of report that makes the board look good, and we thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. As always, we're off to a very a good start with the planning process, and we appreciate you moving us through the process. So, thank you. That is our items for discussion and report this evening. Our items for individual action, the first one being the pay equity report. That is an item for individual action. However, I will have Director of Human Resources, Molly Wieselman, just do the presentation on that, and then prior to questions or comments, we'll have a motion. And again, her report was in our packets.
I don't really have a presentation per se for pay
Okay.
equity, but I'm just going to run through the 3 tests
Excellent.
that we have to do every 3 years. The last time we filed this was in January of 2015, using 2014 information, and now we have to file it in 2018 using 2017 information. So we have to provide data, and then they run 3 different tests on that data. The first one would be the statistical analysis test, and we did pass that. The second one is our salary range test, and we did not pass that test. And the third one is the exceptional service pay test, which we did pass. So the test that we're not passing, the salary range test, when you look at our data, we have a teacher group that has 15 steps in the teacher agreement, and that is a female-dominated class, so it skews our non-certified groups, and when you remove the 15-step certified group, it's very evenly matched, and we do pass the test when you remove the certified group, because our other groups have 6. One of our groups has 6. Some have, a couple have 5, and all the rest have only 4 steps, as opposed to the 15 that are in the teacher agreement. So it skews our passing of that salary range test. And it isn't because we're favoring male-dominated classes over female-dominated. It's more certified versus non-certified. So when you remove them, when you remove the teachers from that equation, we pass that test at 118.1%. So it isn't a matter of male-dominated, female-dominated, or balanced groups. It's just a matter of certified versus non-certified. So I'll be filing a reconsideration with the state for reconsideration on that one aspect of the test. The other 2 we easily passed. And in my 20 years here, we've never had to file for a reconsideration. But often in the negotiations process, things that change in a contract can really or change the outcome of the pay equity test. Was there any other specific questions about the pay equity information?
No, I think I just wanted you to sort of give a broad overview, and we'll ask for a motion, and then if board members have comments, then we can go from there. So thanks, Molly. On that note, is there a motion to approve the January 2018 pay equity report? Moved by Margaret. Is there a second? Second by Ellen. Okay, opportunity for board members to questions or comments regarding the report. Ellen.
So I don't know if you can answer this because you just said that in the 20 years you've never had to go forward and request to have an exemption. So I guess, do we have a sense of how that would play out?
I do believe that when the data that I'll send in will clearly show that when you remove our 15 steps of the certified and you look at all of the other employment groups left over, that they are very equally balanced. So I have a good feeling that we'll be granted that exception. And Kathleen Murphy, the consultant that we work with for pay equity, has had to file the reconsiderations many times in the past, and she says given our data, she was pretty sure that the outcome would be positive. But again, she can't guarantee that, but.
Sure. Do you know then how long it takes what the process is for, just to dovetail on Ellen's question?
Well, when the board approves the
plays
pay
out?
equity report tonight, and then we file it with the state right away tomorrow morning, and then I'll also email in the reconsideration letter that I already have done and ready to go for that. And then I believe it's 1 to 2 months before we hear back anything on that.
Yeah, no doubt. Margaret. Oh, I'm sorry, Amy.
Yeah, it's the same letters, kind of different.
Thank you for that gracious nod.
So, I am the new person here still. I can claim that still. And I am lost a little bit. So I really want to make sure I understand. And so first, I have several questions. So I guess looking at this, does it look like the men are paid more than the women? I mean, is that what it comes down to, or the
No,
women paid more than
the
men?
salary range test is basically, it's the years to the maximum salary that they're looking at. It's not the salary itself, it's how many years does it take you to get there? So for a teacher, it takes 15 years to get to the top step if they come in at step 1. Some people come in at 7 and it's going to take them less time. But if they come in at step 1, it's going to take them 15 years to get to the top of the steps. And that's a female-dominated class. So it skews our data because our other groups only have 4 to 6 steps to get to the maximum salary. So by that female-dominated class having to go 15 steps, it skewed our results. And when you take out the 15 steps and you leave just the contracts that have the 4, 5, or 6 steps, we easily pass that test. So it's not about the salary itself. It's in this test that we're not passing, it's about the number of years it takes to get there.
Okay.
To the maximum salary in the contract.
And why does that matter? I mean, I'm trying to understand why they're measuring this and what they're
well,
looking
because
for.
there can never be a circumstance where male-dominated or female-dominated classes are favored in any way, shape, or form. We want it. That's why it's called an equity. That's why the word equity is in it, because we want to make sure we're treating everyone fairly, whether it's how many years it takes to get to the max salary, whether you have exceptional service pay, whether you have those groups, and that information have to be balanced.
I'm getting there. So the 15-step class, that's actually a large portion of our employees. So you'd be pulling those out. Wouldn't you have to sort of look at them as a separate group somehow?
Well, when you do them as a separate group, they all have the same. So you can't really compare them to themselves. So when you're looking at just the teachers, they all have to go 15 steps to get to the maximum salary. So there is no comparison. But when you're comparing the 15 steps in their contract to the 4, 5, or 6 in all of our other contracts, it skews the results. because they have to go so much longer to get to the maximum salary than all of our other employment agreements. Some having no steps and some having, one has 6, again, one has 5 and the rest of them have 4, and then some of them have no steps at all. They're just flat base salaries.
Wouldn't this be a really common situation in schools in
It is
general?
fairly common,
So
and that's why the reconsiderations are usually granted, because there is a wide difference. And as long as you can prove that it's not a male-female situation, that one is favored over the other, it's more of a non-certified versus certified, which is the case in ours, because when you remove the 15 steps of our certified group, we easily pass that test.
Okay, I think I'm getting there.
Good.
All right, thank you.
Good question. Any other questions or comments? Rob?
I'm just wondering if you have one of the higher paid positions, like say, activities director, go from male to female, I mean, how much difference does that make with one position like that?
Well, in 3 years, we're going to find that out because the data we use for the 2018 report is data based on who was in the position in 2017. And so that position was a male-dominated class at that time. So we'll see, and the changes in who holds the position and what we do with the negotiations process. You know, a lot of our contracts had more steps in the past, and that was something we compressed salary schedules at the time where we had freezes and no increases, and we did some compression. So solving yesterday's problems, you know, creates different, you know, things for us moving forward. But that's something we do keep in the back of our mind always when we're doing the negotiations process, because we don't ever want to be in a position where we're unknowingly favoring a male-dominated class over a female, or vice versa. The best is to have it balanced and to pass that test that way. So, does that answer your question, Rob?
Yep.
Okay.
I just wanted to understand your chart a little bit more. So what are class types and what are jobs points?
Job types are like all the different positions we have in the district, not necessarily an employment agreement, but the positions that are in those agreements are banded and graded. That's the process that we use in our district for job descriptions. You have to have a band and a grade, and the job description, the duties within that job description drive how many points it's worth in the pay equity process. So if, for example, our superintendent's position, Dr. Hillman's position, would have the most points in the district because it holds the most responsibility, decision-making authority. It goes by the amount of decision-making authority you have, the decisions you have to make independently, and then we have some of our other positions that, you know, don't require a high amount of education or anything like that. Those would have the least amount of points, and so there's a whole range, and so that's what it's referring to as the.
It's just like a grade level or something. that
Exactly.
other places have. But the class type with the FMs and Bs. I was
That's
thinking-
whether it's male dominated,
Oh,
female
yeah.
dominated,
Sorry.
or
But I didn't
balanced
know, I
class.
thought it was guess, but I didn't. The balance. Some of them didn't always look balanced.
Well, and they're not going to be exactly balanced. As long as they're balanced enough to pass the percentage that we have to reach, then we're okay with that. They're not going to be exactly balanced. But as long as when you run the test that you have enough of a balance that you hit the percentage that is required to pass that state.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion to approve the January 2018 pay equity report. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Molly.
Yep.
Our next and last item for individual action is the network administration budget coding that we discussed at our last board meeting. So is there a motion to approve changing the budget assignment of the district's network administrator and assistant network administrator salaries from operating capital to the district's general fund? Motion moved by Ellen. Is there a second? Second by Amy. Questions, comments? We had a presentation at our last board meeting, but you may have some other additional questions or comments prior to vote. Is there any from board members? No, okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to the consent grouping. There were some personnel items in the table file. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from consent grouping? Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Jeff. Is there a second? Second by Noel. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Items for information. The Educational Assistant Week, which unfortunately
Has happened
our
already.
recognition of that was derailed by Mother Nature, but we still would like to acknowledge that important group.
Yes, and so, of course, we've gone back as far in recorded history as we could find, and we can never find the Northfield School Board canceling a meeting before, and it has thrown a couple of monkey wrenches into this part of the agenda, so please, I'm asking for forgiveness in advance, one of which is we missed the Educational Recognition Week in terms of formally recognizing it here at this table. We have recognized it in the last week's staff newsletter that we sent out regardless of the board meeting being canceled. Individual buildings did some very nice things for their educational assistants. And of course, we know educational assistants provide a variety of services in lots of different positions throughout the schools. They support instructional activities. Many of them support individual students in special education. They're supporting students at student activities. And they have numerous things that they do during the day that contribute to student success. And we could not run this school every day without our educational assistants. And so while we want every employee to feel valued every day that they work with us, this time of year we set aside and say thank you to our educational assistants. We very much appreciate them. It was last week, I believe, that there was a lot of appreciating going on at various buildings, and I'm sure some sugar and those kinds of things that hopefully didn't, go against the wellness policy. I'm sure we're fine, but our educational assistants do a lot of work with students that many people in the public have no clue needs to happen every day. And it ranges in a variety of different pieces from this week when we're going to be below zero again, outside supervising students as they come in or off the bus. In some cases it's helping special education students learn and regulate their own behavior. Sometimes it is reinforcing the instruction that the teacher has provided. And so we just are so thankful for our educational assistants, and we just want to take this moment at the board meeting to officially thank them for another year's worth of work well done. So thank you very much for your service.
Excellent.
And that
Well
is that
said.
particular piece.
Okay. Our second item is the school board committee appointments. Unfortunately, the final appointments didn't make it into the table file, but they'll get emailed to board members. And I just appreciate everyone's willingness to serve on these as liaison on a number of these really important district committees. And I know the work that those committees do is important, and it's great that as board members we're able to be a part of that work.
And I need to take responsibility for that since it was, I'm happy Anita Ozzie is here, let's just put it that way, so.
It's, there's been a lot going on, and if this is the one ball that got dropped, I think that that's pretty astounding, so.
We'll
no
endeavor to
worries.
persevere, yes.
No worries. Okay, and then speaking of Mother Nature,
Yes.
we thought we'd provide a quick update about where we are and the potential ramifications of now having 2 snow days on our school
So
year.
we just want to, take a moment to reiterate to folks at home and to board members in case you get questions that we do have 2 full day closures, built into our calendar plan. But once we hit that second closure, in fact, in last week's bulletin, Molly and I collaborated on putting in a item for our staff to see, because there's a lot of ramifications should we have to have another full day closure. The first of which is that if we were to have another full day closure prior to prior to or on February 16th, we would then use February 19th, which is scheduled as a staff development day, as a makeup day. Now, this is on the approved calendar. I will be sending out, I'm trying to send something out directly from the superintendent to parents at the end of each quarter. And so this week I'll be sending something home to parents, and this will be included in that, explaining that should we have another snow day between now and February 16th, we would use the February 19th day as a makeup day. I will tell you that in this particular year, that is causing a little bit of heartache in our district office because we have quite a bit of training scheduled for our literacy plan for next year on February 19th. And we have Mary Grace Hansen, our Director of Teaching and Learning, has, I think, 3 different backup plans that she is prepared to go with. But that will be something that I'm going to be making some recommendations as we move forward. As we have become intentional about using the limited full-day professional development times that we have, while it is certainly convenient to recapture that day during the school year, there may be times where we're actually putting ourselves in not the best position if we have really spent some thought about making sure we have very valuable professional development activities on that day. We have so few of those days through the year that I anticipate you're going to see a calendar that no longer recommends that as a student makeup day. Should we have a 3rd student day or a 4th student day past that, we then begin to make up a day on June 8th. And so remember, the maximum we'd make up would be 2 student days, but if we keep going down the road, then staff may come back on June 11th as a makeup day should we get to those. I don't even want to say the number of days out loud that we'd have to get to that, but that is just an overview of where we're at with snow days this year. Does that make sense to folks? And you know, the National Weather Service takes a lot of heat from time to time about some of these kinds of things, and I just can't say enough about the support that they do provide to superintendents. They, in the last 2 years, they've just started some webinars, so if there's a storm coming up, for this storm, we had a webinar that was on Friday that Jim Galseth and I attended. They gave their best thoughts on that day. When they scheduled another one for Sunday at 1 o'clock, we knew we were in a little bit of trouble. And again, they give that live webinar to be able to provide decision makers with the best information that they have at the time. I appreciate that they are honest about their limitations. They will say, this is what we think, but here's what we're confident about and here's what we're not confident about. I also, because I like to ask questions, I have emailed them, and they actually respond. So these meteorologists will respond. I will ask a specific question about northern Rice County, and I'm always getting the information back. Here's the best that we think at this point. In this case, I had asked, if this storm were to kick to the south a little bit like the last few have, it still appears that we're going to be in the heaviest band of snow. I think the response was almost a chuckle saying, this thing could kick to the north or south, and you are going to get the most snow, so I hope you like it. And in our case, they were right. So I just think that we hear from time to time that the National Weather Service, we hear some critique of their work. And I have just, to this point, I have been appreciative of their support in making those very difficult decisions because we, of course, want to always keep kids safe, but we also recognize when we close school that that has a dramatic impact on home and family life and who's taking care of my kids and all those kinds of things. So it is not a decision that we take lightly, but these ones, there was just nothing we could do about it. So 18 inches of snow.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that, you know, the families in the district will be getting the information about how those two snow days could impact going forward. So, and great job on calling it, Dr. Hillman.
Yeah.
That was the right call.
Lucky, yes.
Oh, Jeff.
Weather question, the last time we got near that much snow, do you have a clue?
My understanding is that it has been quite some time, 15 plus years, since we had gotten that amount of snow. Just imagine this, I think we got back, with one storm, we got back within shouting distance of the winter average for snowfall. So when you look back, it's going to look like a relatively average winter, which it hasn't been so far. I shouldn't have said that out loud either, should I?
Yeah, well, there it goes.
Okay, excellent. So that concludes items for information. Our future meetings, we have a regular school board meeting Monday, February 12th, and also Monday, February 26th, both at 7 p.m. in the High School Media Center. And just a reminder that we have a closed session for negotiation strategy immediately following this meeting. And once again, welcome to Anita. You now have your first school board meeting under your belt. And thank you to Aaron Bailey for doing the minutes tonight. So with that, I ask for a motion that we adjourn. Moved by Noel. Is there a second? Second by Ellen. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
We'll be down in the conference room.